You are listening to the Hodges Huddle, where we discuss all things in the wide world of sports. Here is your KLSU Sports team.
Welcome into the Hodges Huddle. I'm your host, Andre Champagne, and today I am joined by Raven Freeman and Jayden Smith. It is the first day back at school, so welcome back. And I don't know about y'all, but I am happy to be back because I worked all summer. I'm sure you guys did too. And I'm ready for some college football. Once you come back to Baton Rouge, you know it's time for some football. But what about y'all?
Yeah, same thing, man. It's always good to go back home, see your family, friends, and everybody from the hometown. But getting back down to Baton Rouge and more of that freedom and more of that just, fun environment, things like that, it's a feeling you just can't really get anyplace else. And you're not going to have forever. So yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it was the first day of my senior year, so I'm a little sad. I never imagined myself
Raven and
leaving LSU.
Raven and I have been here for 3 years now.
3
So
years.
this is
It's
year
crazy.
4 going on strong. We should have had a first day of school picture or something
Oh yeah, and
for the
posted on
KLSU staff.
Instagram.
But
yeah.
we're going to talk about USC LSU today. So let's jump into it. The new look 13th ranked LSU Tigers will take on the new look USC Trojans, as both teams are very identical to each other because one, lots of questions on defense for both of those teams from last year, and a new quarterback after losing Caleb Williams and Jayden Daniels, respective 1 and 2 picks. So this should be a fun matchup. But we're going to start with this LSU offense versus this USC defense. First things first, starting with the LSU offense, obviously they have to they lose production with Jayden Daniels, Malik Neighbors, and Brian Thomas Jr. So do you think that's possible, replacing with the talent on the side of the ball this year?
No, I don't think it's possible, and I don't think it's fair to ask that out of this group of people. For multiple reasons.
I
For
agree.
one, they're not Garrett's not Jayden.
Right.
Kyron's not Malik or BT, and neither is Aaron Anderson or Xavier
Yep.
Thomas or CJ Daniels. They can only be themselves. I mean, last year we had the number one offense in the country, averaged 46 points per game.
Yeah, and you still lost 3 games.
3 games. And I don't really need or want them to be last year's offense. What we got last year is just something
Score
we're
right
only-
away. Yeah.
Right away, and that's something we're only going to get once in maybe a decade. I mean, we got lucky to get 2 offenses
19
like that
and 24, yeah.
in a
But
5-year span.
that's what you're going to get out of LSU no matter what.
Yeah.
You're going to get the production. It's going to take some time, and it
Yeah.
won't be year 1 of a new quarterback. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, also with that big 3, they also had time to develop the
Yes.
skills that they had
Right.
on the field. I feel like this offense just hasn't had, that time. I mean, Garrett in 2021, he was, kind of bouncing back and forth starting.
Yeah.
And last season he didn't start. I mean, this season he's going to start, but it's like Jayden got to have that experience.
Yeah.
And like Jayden said,
Yeah.
this was the number 1 offense in college football. And like in one off season, you're just not going to produce that.
Yeah, and like literally what you said, both of y'all, there's no way they replace the production of all those guys. And we may not see an LSU offense like that in a while, but there's a way where LSU can still be efficient on offense and score a bunch of points. They will have a brand new offense with a new quarterback, and you're going to see LSU run the ball way more than they did last year, which will be the biggest difference to this year. You're going to see a lot more fun plays last year, and this year you're going to be seeing like the blind side, run the dang ball. You're going to be seeing a lot of that. But Garrett Nussmeier, we know he's not going to put up Jayden Daniel numbers, but with how good the offensive line is, this team is still going to score lots of points. But what does Garrett Nussmeier in particular have to do in this game specifically to do enough for LSU to win, but also just kind of looking within the entire season as a whole?
I mean, like being vague, no interceptions. He averages 2 a game.
Yeah.
Jayden had less
Never
than, like,
turned the ball over.
Never.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
never turned the ball
And they
over.
were
like,
off of tips.
Yeah,
Tipped-
right.
Tipped interceptions, yeah.
And Garrett always has that moment where, we're in the red zone, back of the end zone, he
Yeah.
throws a pick.
Yeah.
How do you do that? We needed that 6 points.
Right.
And it's like he does it so often to where it's like he doesn't understand that. He cannot throw interceptions in this game or at all this season. And we know it's bound to happen.
It's going to happen.
It's Garrett,
We
but
know
it's
it's
like
gonna
it
happen.
needs to be less efficient because it's very efficient.
Yeah, the interceptions are efficient. But there's a reason for that,
Right.
and I'll get into that. But
Yeah, I think Garrett just has to be Garrett, and I just think he has to find that line between being Garrett and being smart because
Right.
he's a gunslinger.
Yep.
And with his playing style, you're going to have to live and die with some of those interceptions.
Yeah,
Some of those
absolutely.
are just going to be deep bombs that pay off, and we all jumping and cheering. And some of them is just going to be like, what were you thinking? Why did you throw that?
there's going to
Take
be
the check down.
Yeah, there's going to be a few plays like that. But I think Brian Kelly said it to the media best. When I was in Dallas, he explained it as Garrett Nussmeier was more of a guy who was driving a rental car where he didn't care if he messed it up. But now he's driving
His own
he's
car.
driving his own car.
I like that
so
analogy.
He doesn't
Yeah.
want to wreck it.
That's funny.
Okay.
So I guess for me, that means when he went, in previous games that he played, he always felt like he needed to do something right away. And that's
Yeah.
why you saw he played about 1,000 miles an hour, tried to force throws. And you really didn't see that in the bowl game. You didn't
Yeah.
see that
Right.
in the bowl game.
That's true.
And you also didn't see that in the Alabama game when he had to go in and play. He actually played pretty well in the
Yeah.
Alabama game. But I think this year Joe Sloan knows that LSU can't win just from the deep ball. And
Yeah.
so in practice, when we've kind of saw from practice, you've seen Nuss practice the short and medium throws.
Yeah.
And you've seen him try and be more smart as a decision maker and a quarterback. So I think you're going to see a very different Garrett Nussmeier than what the national media kind of thinks of him. But that's kind of what I see.
Yeah, I think they're just going to be, and really just the season in general, I think the offense is going to be just a whole lot more methodical.
Run the clock a little more.
I think they're going to really start chopping down the field. 'Cause
Yep.
last year, we can go down the field.
Yeah, it was
in
quick.
And
3,
score
4
seven.
plays.
2 minutes.
Like,
Yeah.
like it was
just like
nothing.
that.
This year, you're going to be scoring field goals.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. And you're still going to be scoring touchdowns, but it's not going to be
As
45 points a
consistent,
game.
yeah.
It's-
And we're just
that's-
going to have to be fine with that. It is what it is.
It is what it is. We'll get into it, but what kind of identity does this offense need to have this season with losing all the production that we talked about? Do they need to go out and run the ball, say, 30 times a game?
Like you said earlier, the running game from this season and like the passing game from last season are gonna have to like switch. Like how effective the passing
Yeah.
game was
Yep.
last season, that's how the running game's gonna have to be this season. Because I just feel like defenses, this chemistry between Garrett and these wide receivers, it's fairly new. Like not
It
Kyron
is, yeah.
Lacey, but like not Chris Hilton Jr.
Yep.
But, it's fairly new, and I
Yeah.
feel like defenses are gonna be able to
Transfers.
pick that apart, and that's
Right.
gonna destroy us. So I feel like that running game needs to be able to push us through this season.
Yeah, I agree.
I think our passing game is going to be better than we think
Think
it'll
it's
be.
going to be.
Just
I do too.
because even
Yeah.
I just still think we don't. The thing is, like, I knew Malik was good going into last year, but I didn't know Brian Thomas was that good as well.
yeah.
Like, I thought he could get drafted, but I didn't know he was like 17 touchdowns in the season good. So I still think we don't really know how good a lot of these guys are. I
Could
think
be,
C.J.
yeah.
Daniels had 1,000 yards at Liberty.
And he did, and that'll be an interesting thing to see is
Yeah.
if he can transition that game into the SEC, which
Yeah.
I feel like he will be because he's had his good days in camp. But not to sound like a broken record, I think LSU just has to win the line of scrimmage in every game you play this year.
Yeah.
There's no excuse to not run the ball if we're being honest. With the veterans that you have back, you have the entire offensive line coming back, and then
Yeah.
you also have 2 6-year running backs, as well as Caleb Jackson,
Yeah.
who's going to be one of the nation's most underlooked players, and just another great freshman in Caden Durham. But if they can establish a run game this year, and I mean just establish it, make it present, that will open up for the pass game this year, and that'll help them get where they need to be in the red zone and just not scoring, like you said, every drive, but it'll get the job done.
Yeah.
But who are some players to watch out on offense for this weekend that you think is a bad matchup for USC? So give me some LSU players you kind of have on your radar for this week.
So I said Caleb Jackson. He's put on some weight in the
Yes.
offseason.
Yeah.
LSU showcased that, and I know that was very important to him. He had said something like he did this for his team. He wanted to be like stronger.
Right.
You know, he said he was pushed around a little bit too much last season. And then Josh Williams, since we're talking about the run game, and then, you know,
Yeah.
Josh Williams was just awarded with number 18.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's even more pressure. But I feel like he was more on the reliable side of running backs
He's a
last
leader.
season. So, and then my last one I have, typical, is Kyron Lacey, just because I know he's not Malik. We know that. He's
Yeah.
not BTJ, but people are expecting him to live up to those expectations. I mean, he has the speed, he has the agility, he has the hands to
Yep.
be
He's very physical.
like them. So, I mean, I just hope he showcases that on the field, because last season when he would play, sometimes he lacked
Yep.
in those
Yeah.
spaces.
Yeah, and it's hard to shine when you're in the shadow of those two guys.
That is true,
So,
yeah.
Yeah, especially the Kyron Lacey take. I just think it's so interesting. It kind of reminds me of the Juju Smith-Schuster, Antonio Brown situation.
yeah.
I think Juju had like 1,400 yards next to AB, but it was just because Antonio Brown was getting
Yeah.
double and triple coverage the entire game. So now I'm interested to see how Kyron handles
The wide
majority
receiver
of
one
that-
now, yeah.
the wide receiver
Yeah.
one position,
I
and
agree.
most of that pressure and those coverages that you go up against, especially when you start playing these, you know, upper echelon
Yeah.
schools. And I also want to throw in Xavion Thomas in there,
Mhm.
just
Okay.
because I think he just has X factor written all over him. I mean, he's super shifty, super elusive, super fast, good hands, and I think he's just a matchup for any team that we
Yeah.
play against.
I like that. So we all have wide receivers pretty much. I actually have C.J. Daniels for this weekend. He's a 1,000-yard receiving guy from last year, like Jayden said, and he's a great into fall. He had a great end to fall camp.
Yeah.
I think if he can find ways to get open, USC is going to struggle with getting him down, as he was a very high intelligent player, and he was a great yak guy, which is a yard after
Yeah, he's
catch.
very hard to tackle.
Yeah. So I think he's going to be very good. But it's interesting because if Chris Hilton is not able to go
Right.
for Sunday, then apparently Kyle Parker is wide receiver 3 now. So, I mean, it's next man up.
Yeah,
But you know that's kind of a question with LSU is do they have enough wide receiver depth?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, this year. And I think they'll step up.
Yeah.
You just haven't seen it in a full game yet.
Right.
So what does USC have to do in this game against the LSU offense, where they had struggles in last year with a bunch of new faces? So USC has a lot new transfers coming in. What do they have to do to throw LSU's offense off?
I
Well-
think, you can go.
Going
ahead.
back to what Raven said about the chemistry between Garrett and the new receiving core being an issue, I think USC is going to really have to test that and
Yeah,
see
exactly.
how true it is. And I think by doing that, first they got to shut down the run game. They have to come out
Okay.
the gate firing like, hey, you're not going to be able to run the ball tonight. You're going to have to open up that playbook. And you're going to have to trust Garrett Nussmeier to make some throws. And I think as long as – I think if that's the card that you're playing with, then I think you live and die with that.
Okay.
Yeah. I trust this offensive line with all my heart.
Yeah.
I love these guys. But I feel like if they're slacking in any areas, which they shouldn't be,
Right,
and they
right.
can put
I think we
You
have
may
the
not
best
see
O-line
that.
in the country.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I think so. Other than center, which is kind of a question right now, but that's something that can get fixed.
right. But if this USC defense is able to pick apart Garrett like I think they will, if they're able to get pressure on Garrett, then I feel like this could be a
It
pretty
could be bad. Yeah,
easy game for them to.
starts at the line of scrimmage. I think
Yeah.
you're right. I think USC just needs to find a way, like Raven's trying to get at right now, is getting pressure to Garrett Nussmeier consistently, because, like you said, he's a guy with not much experience, and this will go both ways. I mean, Miller Moss is a guy that hasn't played much, and if you get pressure to the guy, he's not going to know what to do. Same thing with Garrett Nussmeier. He might, he seems poised, but he might get in his head.
Right.
And like I said, the offensive line from LSU won't be easy to get through, so it's important that USC in particular finds creative ways to get Nuss off of his game.
Yeah.
Because we know the turnover issue is that, like, it's a thing.
It's a narrative.
It is a thing.
Yeah.
And it is there no matter how much, people want to put it off. But do you think this is a game that LSU has to score 30 plus?
No, I personally think this is a low-scoring game. I know we're about to talk about the
Yeah.
defenses, but I feel like this is a battle of the defenses. And then, I know we have a newer offense than USC, but, they still bringing in, a new quarterback.
Actually, they have a lot of they have a
New-
lot of new guys too.
Yeah.
So.
So, I mean, I feel like both these offenses are going to be
Struggling.
rather shaky. I feel like this is going to be, a defensive game for sure.
I like that take. Yeah.
Throw out a new terminology here. I think it'll be like a mid-scoring game. Just
Okay.
mid to high 20s, no more than that.
Yeah.
And I think it's just so funny because the story of both of these teams last year was
Offense.
really good quarterbacks, amazing quarterbacks,
gonna
no
be the-
defense.
it's gonna be
every
the
time-
opposite of that,
And
you
I
think?
think it's just going to be the complete opposite of that.
We have the exact same thing now.
Yeah.
Because I do think, like Raven made a great point. This is a game where it's the first game for a bunch of newcomers,
Yeah.
and you're gonna see them struggle offensively to get things going. And that's usually how it is in anything. The defense is gonna have the upper hand in this game in particular because of that experience. And I think LSU will score 30 plus, but I think the defense will surprise us. So I don't think it'll be needed, but I'm going to say anywhere between 25 to 28, like you said, wins this game. But let's get to the LSU defense versus the USC offense. This is the biggest question in the game for both teams. Is if LSU gets the same defense as last year. We got tired of covering them many times.
Yes.
We came in here
Very
every
irritating.
Tuesday afternoon.
We demolished them every time.
And I mean, I don't think there was one man not liked by a whole staff more than this one. But after the bowl game, Brian Kelly went and fired the entire defensive staff and hired an entire new coaching staff, starting with Blake Baker, who took over as the defensive coordinator. Kelly also brought in Bo Davis and Kevin Peoples to coach up the defensive line, which has been a group that has lacked for years. And then, obviously, the godfather DBU is back with Corey Raymond.
Mm-hmm.
We got to see him.
Yeah.
He was very intense.
Aura.
It was aura. Yeah. You could tell the aura at LSU.
Yeah, he was in all black. Like, he wasn't saying
And
that
it was
he
hot.
Yeah.
It was hot, man. I don't know how they do that.
Yeah.
But now, on USC side, they don't return a whole lot on offense as they will have a new starter in Miller Moss, who did have a great bowl game against Louisville, but it was Louisville. So, like you said, it's a lot of opt-outs and a lot of new things that go on that you don't know plays a role now. So, and then a whole lot of new faces surrounding Moss with transfers at wide receiver and running back. So, just looking back at last year, this LSU team had one of the worst defenses just in the history of the program. First off, do you believe things will be different this year with the personnel change, where LSU, they are returning a lot of starters? So
I believe things will be different simply because I don't see how they could be any worse. I do not understand. I don't think they can get any worse than they got last year. And aside from that, this coaching staff now, it seems like more of a staff that can relate and really connect with the players.
I agree.
Because I know for sure, like, when the staff got fired last year, it wasn't a lot of, like, oh, man, I'm going to miss you, man. It was, all right, now let's get to work. Like, let's get with somebody that knows what they're doing, that can put me in position to where I can thrive.
Get the technique stuff at least now. Yeah.
And so just for those reasons alone, I think this defense will at least be better than last year. I don't know how good they can be, but
if they can stick to like top 50 defense,
we can't be finishing in the hundreds of categories.
You can't be 133rd, right? Top 50, you have a possible playoff team.
Yeah,
I mean, seriously,
12 spots.
But Raven, what do you think?
Returning a lot of starters.
Yeah.
Kind of confused and surprised me. I feel like we talked about last season how try something new. I feel like something new isn't really being tried. Like Jayden said, it can't get any worse than last season. But I feel like a big issue was, yes, the coaching, but those guys, like their mindset, it wasn't in it. I mean, like they play like they did not want to be there.
That
And like a coach,
coaching.
a coach can change that mindset, but it's also like it starts with the player. That's what I learned. I interned at KPRC2 News this summer, and I went to Texans training camp. Mm-hmm. And, like, that is all D'Amico Ryans talked about. It is the team's mindset when it comes to penalties.
Yeah, you got to
all of that. I mean, and, like, I just don't see coaches changing that mindset. I hope they do, but it's like the starters, like, why not try something new?
So you think it's a player
I do.
effort
Oh,
thing.
100%.
But do you think that gets fixed this year?
I hope so. I think it will. But the starters situation from last year is kind of scaring me. honestly.
I just think so much of the way they played last year might have been just reflective of poor
The coaching?
coaching. It's
Yeah,
like,
I
oh
think
man,
so.
this,
Yeah.
if this guy sucks, man, every time he sends us out there, we getting bombed on. Like,
Yeah,
I don't want to keep
or
going
like
out there
every
for
time
you.
we send pressure on this package, we're getting killed, and
Yeah,
we know
like,
it. Like
exactly.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think we may see some problems this year for the LSU defense, but the difference is that this year those issues are going to be fixed.
Right.
There shouldn't be as many coverage busts and just
Yeah.
confusion within the DB room, and you'll see a lot more running around and pressure
Yeah.
of the sort. So I think if there are issues, it's going to be simple things like gap filling, timing issues,
Yeah.
and it's not going to be something where you're like, how the heck did this happen, right?
Right.
And Raven makes an interesting point because I actually think the kid, if you look at one of the videos, shout out Jock Duce, he had a video after the bowl game where Matt House is talking to some of the defensive linemen like Makai Wingo, Jordan Jefferson, and he's trying to joke with them, and Makai Wingo is like, bro, I don't like you.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like I don't
Exactly.
like. I mean, you can assume at the face that Makai
Right.
had that he was like,
Yeah,
you
they
were
had
a
no
reason
respect for
why
him
we
through
were
our
this bad.
season
Yeah.
away.
Yeah. They had
So
no respect.
I mean, I don't want to speculate, but I mean, I'm just saying, like,
Yeah.
look at what Harold Perkins put on Twitter after Blake Baker got
Right.
hired. Look at the demeanor
Yeah.
in the room. Almost said Demir because you guys have been having me say Demir, but I think the player's attitude is what the coach, if you can relate to the kids.
Right.
Yeah.
And Blake Baker is in cleats. The guy is literally practicing with him.
Yeah.
That should literally make you want to go through a wall. Like,
Right.
Yeah, I mean that's why there's different coaching archetypes. Like some coaches are just
Yeah, man.
motivators. You can just get your players fired up to go and play
Like
for
NCAA.
you. Exactly.
hey, Blake Baker is a motivator.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And some people are just not. And
That house was
that's
not,
all right.
right? But what is your biggest concern about this defense still leading into that USC game?
I don't really have any concerns. Just more so, I'm just so like anxious to see how they're
See-
going to look, and I really
how
want to
different.
see what kind of adjustments they're going to be able to make. Because last season it wasn't just that we would be getting killed; it's just there would be no adjustment.
Right.
I mean, we watched Jalen
We
Milroe
watched
win a Heisman,
and we didn't have a spy the
we didn't
entire
have a
game.
spy the entire
Right.
game, and that's not even. That shouldn't even be adjustments. That's just
No.
game planning. Like
Yeah,
you already
yeah.
know, you got a mobile
And he
quarterback.
would.
Okay, I need.
He's
to
a
have
mobile
somebody
quarterback, and he scored 2 rushing touchdowns on you in the first half, and you knew it was going to be a problem in the second half, and it almost got worse. So
You didn't change anything.
Yeah, you
so
didn't.
I'm just curious to see how the coordinators and the players are going to be able to adapt to whatever
Right.
is happening to them.
okay.
Yeah, I'm on Jayden's side as far as I don't want to name any concerns.
Okay.
We haven't seen anything.
Right.
Exactly.
let's
We literally have not
let's
seen
just let it
anything.
pan out. But if I had to say a concern, it would be the secondary.
Okay.
I'm
Yeah,
very
that's fair. Yeah, that's
anxious
fair.
to
Yeah.
see how they perform. I mean, even watching like fall camp footage, like Kyron Lacy.
I have
make-
seen. I mean, those guys have actually been.
I will say when,
Really?
when
they,
I went
they
Wednesday,
are tit for tat right now.
when I went Wednesday,
Yeah.
they were at least turning their head to the ball.
They're making
So
plays. on the ball,
I can
yeah.
say that
Yeah.
because last year they wasn't doing that.
Right.
I don't know, cause like
And they don't line up 6 yards away.
I've just seen some things, and I'm like, come on, man.
Yeah, I get
That
it.
shit- shouldn't have happened.
And understandably so, because once you have been,
Traumatized.
traumatized
Traumatized.
as just a football enjoyer.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're LSU students, so just seeing that kind of boils our blood. But from an unbiased perspective, that defense cost Jayden Daniels a championship.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, 100%.
So that's something you have to look at. But I'll say the biggest concern about this defense for me is just the collective of the group. Like you said,
Yeah.
they haven't played together, so you just don't know too much about the communication and how they're going to kind of ball down. It's kind of like last year when you had one too many transfers. You had Omar Spates playing, you had Ovia Gofu. You just had one too many guys in that
Just
Florida
throwing
State
guys.
game. Like, what's going on here? So, and then we saw the defensive line struggle last year to get pressure all games. So I'll say they're right now on my list the number one concern, because if you give the quarterback enough time to just do what he wants, they're going to go and score 40 points on you. So I'll say my biggest concern right now, just if I had to pick, is the defensive line and getting pressure to the quarterback. And if that's still an issue, like I said, it can be troublesome come
Right.
Sunday. But what about this new Blake Baker defense are you looking forward to seeing now that we're done with concerns?
I'm looking to seeing Ashton Stamps in action. I think we have a corner.
CB1?
A CB1, which last year, again, we didn't really have one. And I just think that just made things all the more complicated. So I'm looking to see how he takes on the role of maybe guarding the best player, putting him in a bunch of different coverages, disguising the mix and things of that nature. He is a little undersized, so I just want to see this defense play with some passion again.
Right.
I just think last year, and again, this could be reflective of coaching. It was times it just seemed like there was just no sense of urgency.
And they're like,
I
"What?"
don't care if I win my matchup. Like, I just want to see you go out there and just compete.
I agree.
Yeah. I'm most excited, and this is basics as a coach, I feel like, but last season we used the puzzle analogy. I mean, like, players were just simply not in the right spots.
Yeah.
Harold was not
Yeah.
where he could perform best. I'm just excited to see what these coaches have actually done
With him.
with him and with this defense. I mean, Harold wasn't really the only one in that position last year. A lot of these players were even simply placed where they couldn't
Omar
perform.
Spates. Look at Omar Spates.
Right.
He is now one of the highest graded
He's doing so well on the Rams.
linebackers
Yes.
in the
Him-
NFL
Yes.
preseason.
Yes.
Yeah.
And looking back,
If
I
you
mean,
would've
I
told
remember
me that-
telling you guys, I was like, this guy stinks.
I would have laughed in your face, literally.
Andre, if you told me that after last year's
I would have
that
laughed.
Texas A&M game,
That's what I'm saying.
I would have thought you were crazy.
Exactly. So I'm looking forward most to the linebacker group and
Yeah.
defensive backs to see how much they've changed technique-wise. Like we said, Blake Baker has allowed the team to just go after the ball without confusing them, and that's going to be special to watch because now they're just playing football. They're not
Right.
thinking.
Yeah.
They're going to the ball. They're doing their assignment, and they don't have to worry about, hey, if this guy stinks it up, then what else do I have to do?
Yeah.
And what if that happens? Like, you don't need to have to think about all that when you're playing football. Go after the ball and know what you're doing in certain plays. So I think it's as simple as that. And like we said, when we went to practice, we don't see the DBs giving them 5 yards of separation.
Yeah.
You're seeing corners are pressing again. You're seeing just a lot of movement, a lot of communication within the linebacker group. It's going to be fun to watch.
Yeah.
Even if they do get burnout time, I really think that the depth of this team is going to be special because you had guys that you put into the fire last year, and I know you said you're happy to watch Ashton Stamps now. I'm like, man, were you tired of watching Deuce Chestnut in game 1 and 2?
Yeah, I was.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and Denver Harris.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
for
Don't
the
even
short
mention
time.
Dan
Yeah.
For the short time.
Who?
But,
Oh.
exactly. But what does LSU have to do well on Sunday against a team that loves to live off of those chunk plays?
You can't get beat. You cannot have broken coverages.
Right.
And honestly, I would say just play discipline. If you have to give up a 12-yard in route, give up the 12-yard in. Like, don't go for the double
Or
moves.
the PI. If you know you're going to get beat
Yeah.
on an end zone play.
Yeah. And that's
I'll
the
take
thing
the
I love.
PI.
I think
I'll take
that's
the
the thing I
PI.
love about college. I wish they would do that in the NFL, but I'm so glad that it's 15 yards and just not a
Yeah.
complete bailout. Also, and safety help's got to be there. So whoever's going to be at that top,
Yeah.
I need you. You got
Jordan
be
Gilbert
there,
and Jordan Allen. So
Yeah, I mean, going off what Jayden said, I feel like broken coverage is the biggest one to me, which we saw a lot of last season. I mean, that just cannot happen, not even only in this game, but like throughout the whole season because we saw how much that cost us
Yeah.
yeah.
the whole season.
Yeah, literally what Jayden said, I'm kind of piggybacking off of him, but they need to make sure that the safeties and the defensive backs are able to communicate with each other because that was a huge struggle last year, and you could tell how mad they were after a play,
Yeah.
and they're looking at each other like, exactly.
What are you doing?
You want communication, and you could be like, hey, if it's on him, if a guy's like, my bad, I'd like rather see that than a guy be like, what's
yeah,
going
if you
on?
see your team and they throwing their hands up at each other,
You're
in
over.
trouble.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're
You're
done.
in
The
trouble.
body
Fried.
language is
Yeah.
the other team already knows they won.
Yeah.
So
Oh, and not to cut you off,
No, you're
I
good.
forgot tackling. We have to make open field tackles this year.
that's something I've been
Because
impressed
That is the sole reason why we lost against Ole Miss last year. I will die on that hill. And we almost lost to Missouri for the same reason.
I agree.
Open field tackling.
Yeah. I agree. But let's see. Last question, pretty much almost. Who in fall camp has stood out on the defensive side? And I guess who do you think will be playing a big impact, not only this season, but definitely for this week against USC?
I'm going to go with Weeks for sure.
I
feel like
pick.
he's evolved so much from last season in such a short period of time, too. I mean, watching him during fall camp, he's had some nice third, fourth down, huge stops, which is another thing we lacked last year. I feel like
third down stops, yes.
Yeah, we were just marching. And, like, the way the teams were like, oh, yeah, let's go on fourth down. They knew. They were like, oh, yeah. Well,
It was like 4th and 7. Lane Kiffin was, we'll send him back out there.
So
We're down by a touch. Okay, we'll send him back.
And then they literally go down there and score. It was pitiful. But, I'm very excited to see how Whit Weeks performs. That's my
I love that pick.
For me, it's going to be Ashton Stamps. I got to go to a practice with Andre, and just the way that he was not only playing coverage well,
Swagger.
but the way he was just flying to the ball.
Yeah.
Even when you're not in coverage, flying to the ball to make the tackle and actually being in the spot that you're supposed to be in, it's just a breath of fresh air, man.
Yeah.
It really is.
I have Ashton Stamps, too, and he's someone that has flashed literally every single practice. Every practice that I went to, he made a play. He had a pick. He had a pass breakup. It was something. And that's great news because Brian Kelly stuck him right in the line of fire last year when others couldn't get the job done. And you look at Javian Toviano, he did the same thing with him. So you kind of think about it. Your starters are going to be Sage Ryan, who has had experience, no matter how bad you think he is. I'm telling y'all now, he's going to surprise some people this year. You have Stamps, who has a lot of experience. You have I'm missing some people.
Toviano.
I
mean, getting
you have
first
guys.
start being an
Jordan
Alabama
Gilbert
game
has
is crazy.
experience. You have J.K. Johnson, who has experience now. It's a lot of these guys, and I can't think about a time where LSU was actually deep at cornerback for so long. Definitely it was during the Raymond days, but dating back for the last 5 years, you can't really think of that. So, but Stamps isn't the biggest of corners, but he's extremely smart, and he reads the eyes of a quarterback well. But another person that impressed me was P.J. Woodland, and he's a freshman corner that has the height to go and be really physical with a guy that is that 6'2", 6'3" receiver in one-on-one opportunities where maybe Ashton Stamps can't and go and do that.
Right.
But the depth, like I said, was last year it was an issue, and now, knock on wood, they are healthy and have many people who have experience. But just wrapping things up, this should be a very different team this year. We all know that.
Yeah.
So let's talk about how big it is for the 12-team playoff to be a thing now in college football and what that means for LSU.
I think it's so much better, especially because the past couple of seasons, that's right about where we end up finishing the season anyway.
Yeah.
And so I think, look, if we can just do that, then we'll be just fine.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm very excited for 12 teams to be able
Me
to
too.
participate in the playoffs. I mean, no hate to bowl games, but it's like,
They don't mean anything
which
anymore.
would you rather? I mean, you know.
Yeah.
As far as LSU, they finished ranked 13 last season with an
They're right on the
awful
outside.
defense. I feel like, you know, I don't want to jinx anything because I'm a jinxer, but I feel like we have a shot. For
Okay.
sure.
Yeah, the 12-team playoff is one of the best things to happen in college football in general. Like you said, you don't get the bowl opt-outs anymore. Fine, and it will certainly benefit a team like LSU, who you know dang well they're not going to be a top 4 seed this year, but could absolutely catch fire by the end of the season if they get things figured out.
Right.
So it's certainly going to be up to them to win the important games this season, especially the ones at home, and then winning the ones that they're supposed to win on the road. So if they can do that, there's definitely a chance that they sneak in. I would say 10 or 11 maybe.
Yeah.
But the problem with that is that other SEC teams are going to be right where LSU is.
Oh, of course.
They're going to be on the outside looking in, and they're also going to have the either 1 or 2 losses.
Yeah.
So that's why you got to win the big ones. But early predictions, how do you think LSU finished this year record-wise and losses maybe that you see down the road?
I think we can win 10 games,
Yeah.
and I think the key to that is we're going to have to win those one-possession games.
Yep.
I think as long as we can do that, we'll be just fine. Last year, I think we lost a couple of 1-2 possession games.
Ole Miss.
Ole Miss.
Florida State was not.
Oh no,
Alabama was at one point.
it was until
until Jayden
wasn't-
Daniels got hurt. But
yeah, I think we're gonna have to really win close games this year. We cannot afford to give away games and be like, oh man, if we did this, we would have won that game. Like,
Yeah.
we don't have time for that this year. I think the SEC got even better because
somehow.
last year was supposed to be the year that it was.
Well,
like
now
this
you have
weekend.
Texas and OU in
Yeah.
the league, so that doesn't help. But-
Exactly.
How
So,
lovely.
Yeah. Now we're really gonna have to like grind it out.
So you think record-wise maybe 10-2? You said
9-3.
9-3. Okay.
9-3.
I'm gonna go 10-2.
Okay.
I have the losses as Ole Miss and Bama.
Okay. Both
I
at
feel
home.
Like, oh yeah, both at home. I feel like Ole Miss is going to be. I think they're gonna shock a lot of people.
I disagree, but
Really?
I'm gonna say LSU goes 10-2 still, but I'm gonna have Alabama at home and Texas A&M on the road. I don't think
Oh.
LSU loses both to Ole Miss and Alabama. I think
certainly
they're gonna
hope
lose one of those maybe,
They're not
and
gonna
then lose
to
one.
A&M.
They're gonna lose to one on the road. I don't know. It's either gonna be Florida or A&M. Y'all might think I'm crazy.
Florida.
I'm telling y'all, it's gonna happen. We're gonna come back
They're
here.
more
Yeah.
likely to lose to Ole Miss than either of those teams.
I have a hunch. I don't know what to tell you.
Okay.
But closing out today's pod, do you see LSU winning their first season opener since 2019 on Sunday?
Yes.
Yeah.
We have to do it eventually.
One of these days.
One of these days.
No more Florida State.
Like-
I feel like Florida
Thank
State
God.
just had like a curse on us.
Yeah, they had
knew.
an X on us for sure.
Oh,
they
yeah.
got the Seminole, voodoo thing going on.
Oh yeah,
maybe.
when I went to the game, I was like, yeah, y'all are like putting some type of
Stuff in the
spell,
water.
some
yeah.
type of
I just-
crap.
We just forgot how to play whenever we played Florida State. I don't
Yeah.
know what it was.
For
but
You
sure.
think they win?
I think
No?
we win this
Oh yeah,
Sunday.
for sure.
Yeah, I think it's more likely than not. I'm not going to say yes or no. I think LSU has been building the program for so many years now that they've had to live from the transfer portal for defense. And this year, you don't see that.
Yeah.
I trust the coaching staff, and I'll say LSU escapes with a very insanely close game. But I think they'll win. But that's going to do it here for us today on the Hodges Huddle. Thank you to Raven and Jayden for joining me on the first episode of the semester. It's always a great time with y'all. I'm Andre Champagne, and this has been the Hodges Huddle.